All right. Well, hello, Peter and Winnie. Jamen here at your service. About to do a little screen share and share with you about collective intelligence, our form of collective intelligence that we're pioneering. All right. So, can you see this whiteboard?
Yes, sir.
The mouse moving around. Okay. So, central to this formulation of collective intelligence, and we have no attachment. I have no attachment, and I don't want to have any attachment to this particular form of collective intelligence. But this particular form makes heavy use of something called a teleological taxonomy. Teleological taxonomy. And
regular words are going to tell us what that means.
Exactly. Now, are you comfortable with a taxonomy?
No.
Okay. Just think of it as like an inverted tree. So why tell them when you can show them? Well, I'm just going to build one right now where whole world is kind of like the apex of the taxonomy, and then sub branches build out from there, and then sub branches build out from those. This is what I mean by a taxonomy, right? And it originally, I think the concept of a taxonomy was originally pioneered by a Swede named Linnaeus, who created the first taxonomy of biology, of life. And, where you have like plants and animals, and then animals, you got primates and reptiles and all that, but it all originates from a common, trunk, which is, all living creatures, right? So, so that's a taxonomy, and a biological taxonomy is just a taxonomy. It's not a teleological taxonomy. There's no telos. So what is a telos? A telos is an aim or a goal, right? And so in our case, the teleological taxonomy starts with the aim or the goal of a whole world. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, we're using whole in the holistic sense, healthy, complete, whole, whole, right? A whole world. So if that's our goal, if that's our ultimate aim, or the telos is to have a whole world, well, what will it take to have a whole world? Well, one way of looking at it is that people need to be whole. We need to have whole people. And we need to have a whole planet, right? Now, see, because this particular collective intelligence is kind of people-centric, right? Why are we carving out people? It's almost like, half the battle is people and the other half is the rest of the planet, right? I mean, that's pretty arrogant for not just one species, not just any species, but the one that's done the most harm to the rest of the species. Pretty damned arrogant, I would say. But anyway, that's kind of where we're at right now. We're coming at this from a human-centric perspective, for better or for worse. All right, well, what does it take for people to be whole? Well, they need to have enough to eat and drink. They need to have some basic shelter. They need to have community. They need wellness. They need all these things. ... So, here you've got this whole, and by the way, sometimes I'm going to highlight stuff and then delete it. This whole thing right here itself is a teleological taxonomy. It's just that it's focused on people, right? So it's kind of like a fractal in that sense. Anyway, okay. Now, what's it going to take for the planet to be whole? Well, we need for the land to be whole. I'm just putting whole kind of in blue here in smaller letters. We need for the water in the planet to be whole. We need for the air of the planet to be whole. We need for ecosystems and species to be whole. What does it mean for a species to be whole? Well, for one thing, it'd be nice if it wouldn't go extinct like 100 to 200 are going today. So we're very far from wholeness right now. What does it mean for, the air to be whole? Well, it actually means a lot of things. I mean, for air to be whole, it means we need an atmosphere that's whole. And what does that mean? It means one that's supportive of life. You see, this is where the teleological taxonomy really comes to play. I mean, if some aliens from another star system came to Earth and said, "Oh my goodness, what a great planet to mine for all these minerals," who gives a shit if it's a very hot planet? In fact, that's better for us for energy generation anyway, or whatever. So those aliens who seek to mine the planet might have a whole different perspective on what it means to have a whole atmosphere. So this is really where the teleological part of the teleological taxonomy kicks in, and really, is the driver here, because you trace it back. Well, we need whole air. Well, for what? To have a whole planet. Well, what does that mean, right? Well, that means it's doing its part in creating a whole world, and a whole world means people are whole and the planet is whole. So it's very people-centric in that sense. But anyway, so having a whole atmosphere, therefore, because of the telos of a whole world, means an atmosphere that's supportive of life, of all the world's ecosystems and species, including but not limited to people, right? Okay. So, but having whole air also, it means a lot more things than just the global atmosphere. I mean, take like, urban air, right? And there's lots of different probably categories of urban air quality issues, depending on whether you're a coastal city or an inland city or whatever. But anyway, so that that breaks out into all these specific examples, one of which is Mexico City, which has its own set of issues. So it goes from the very general, of having a whole world, a whole planet, whole air, whole urban air, to all the way down to a specific city. And why not, all the way down to specific neighborhoods within that city. Boom, boom, boom. Right.
Yep.
So anyway, so I've gotten kind of specific here and there, and that's fine. But now let's go back to the general. So we have the telos of a whole world. And at this point, I'm just going to, break it down. I'm just going to show it kind of impressionistically, just give some example, just not examples, but just sort of an impressionistic picture of the taxonomy. And let's just say at the very end, I don't want to draw for the next half hour, 10,000 lines or whatever, but just suppose that at the very end of all this analysis, we end up with a bunch of leaf nodes, which I draw in red here as these little squares, and there's probably millions of these. But all these leaf nodes, what do these represent? These represent every single specific need that the whole world needs to have met. Think of this as a checklist, right? When we can say check, 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 like, for example, one of the examples up here is, Mexico City, air. And the goal is that be whole, right? Now that in turn may break down into, north, south, east, west, and, points of emission, and, parks and nature within the city, and all these different elements. Basically, every one of those requirements has to be met in order for us to score a 100% perfect A+ score scorecard for the telos of a whole world, right? Is that making sense so far?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay,
that spells out nice.
Good. Okay, great. So the red boxes then are what we call, these are the needs, right? And in fact, we could, create giant red boxes for whole world itself, planet, people, air, land, water, et cetera, et cetera. And those are all needs, right? It's just that once you fill up the leaf nodes, then you get the whole tree, because the whole tree is a roll-up of sorts of all these leaf nodes, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And I can't encourage you enough to just jump in with questions at any time. There are no stupid questions, and because who knows, you may want to share this with some friends of yours and say, hey, I had a great introduction to collective intelligence, I want to share this with you. So any questions you think your friends might have, just feel free to articulate them. So over here, I'll just do a little whatchamacallit, a little space here on this side that's just so I can categorize this stuff. Okay, so this layer right here is the layer of needs. Okay, so we need this, we need this, we need this. All right, so we need all this stuff, and through an iterative process, we will determine a set of goals that we want to set to achieve. And I put these as blue circles, very different from the red squares. This is a set of goals. And I'm just kind of representing it just sort of impressionistically at this point as these individual blue circles. And these goals map in very specific ways to one or more of these leaf node needs that we've identified. Some goals, in fact, holistically address multiple needs at once. So anyway, there's this whole relationship between goals and needs. And I'm going to intentionally leave goals as somewhat mysterious right now. How did we arrive at them and all that? The reality is it's an iterative process. The needs arguably are much less changing than the goals. You can come up with any mixes of goals that you want, and there's an important temporal aspect to the goals as well. Anyway, it'll become clearer as time goes on what we're talking about. But they are specific, they are measurable, and you've either achieved them or you haven't, or you've achieved them to some degree, like you've achieved 70% of a given goal or whatever. Okay,
all right.
And to achieve these goals, we have a number of let's see here. I don't want to represent this. Okay, so there can be many different ways, I'll just put in green here, ways to achieve these specific goals, right? And so these different ways, these can kind of, they can sort of branch. So a specific goal could be achieved in any one of these three different ways, right? And so you've got all these ways of achieving all these different goals. And there's something even more general than a specific way, and that is what we call solutions. And a solution can be anything from, in fact, ways is kind of more parenthetical, because really at the end of the day we'll do just fine with solutions, which include ways of doing things. But or sometimes or if you want to think of them separately, you could think of a solution as something that that emerges in response to to achieve this way of achieving this goal. And these solutions, I represent these solutions as these kind of stacks of gold coins, and you'll see why in a little bit. But first, I just kind of want to complete the big picture, and then I want to play a 4-minute video for you that tells that really highlights an important part of this. and then we'll go back to the big picture. So to complete this, these solutions or these ways to achieve these goals, which in turn fulfill on meeting basic needs that people on the planet have, the solutions that we develop invariably draw upon resources, and I represent them by these little black rectangles that I just bunch up all together in one long strip, right? So each little rectangle is a different resource. Okay. And so any given solution might draw upon multiple different resources. And in fact, you might come up with a component of a solution, right, that I represent like this, that draws upon these specific resources. And then that component of a solution in turn becomes part of a larger solution, or it supports a higher level solution, which may in turn draw upon other resources. It could conceivably even use some of the same resources, and it can draw upon other, component solutions, right? Which in turn draw on other resources. You could, let me just give one example. Let's just say the solution is to, build this big tractor, right? And, use that for farming XYZ. Okay, great. All right. Well, that tractor. Have you ever heard of the concept of a bill of materials, like in manufacturing?
Yeah, not necessarily sure what it means, but I've heard of it.
Okay, a bill of materials is nothing more than an ingredients list. So for this tractor, it's got a bill of materials of needs this tire, two of these big tires, it needs two of these little tires, it needs blah, blah, blah. It needs an engine. So here's an engine. Well, that engine in turn consists of all these sub-assemblies, right? The engine block, the pistons, this and that. And each of those consists of a number of different parts, right? So in this model, ultimately, all these parts that need to be made draw upon certain resources: rubber, steel, glass, copper, and so ultimately everything can be mapped down to resources, and then this tractor can be used in conjunction with, I'm just going to put this now. I'm just going to draw a picture of putting it as a stack of gold coins, and you'll see why I'll later get into that. But anyway, that is a solution, is that tractor. But then that tractor, of course, can be combined with other solutions to create this mega solution. Now I'm kind of cramming it up here, which in turn can achieve all of these different goals, right? One of my favorite examples is holistic land management, the whole Alan Savory stuff. That is a solution which meets lots of different goals, right? Goals in terms of healing ecosystems, protecting species, conserving water, sequestering carbon. I mean, just think of all the different areas that it cuts across: food production, job creation, livelihood, so many great things. So anyway, that's an example. Okay, I know I've still been talking kind of at the abstract level, which is why now is a perfect moment to go from the abstract to something more specific, and that is a video I'm going to play for you, which takes about 4 minutes to watch. And the video is on Brainswarming. This is a video that was published on the Harvard Business Review, and we're going to play now.
Pure art. Hi, I'm Dr. Tony McCaffrey. Brainstorming, the practice of sharing ideas while withholding judgment,
you may want to mute.
Rose to popularity in the.
You may want to mute your microphone, Peter. That'll help for the recording and whatnot. Just for
Okay.
this 4 minute segment. Okay, here goes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tony McCaffrey. Brainstorming, The practice of sharing ideas while withholding judgment rose to popularity in the early 1950s with the promise of producing more ideas. The problem is, it never worked. No study has shown that brainstorming produces more ideas than people just working alone for a while, and then coming together to share their ideas and build on them. It doesn't work because sharing one idea at a time, by talking no less, is incredibly inefficient. Further, extroverts always dominate introverts and hamper idea generation, even if you have a talented facilitator. Brainswarming, an approach I pioneered with my colleagues, directly challenges the foundation of brainstorming by asking, why do we need to talk in the first place? This idea is probably best explained using an example from the lives of insects. Ants solve problems by leaving signals in their environment that influence the behavior of the others. When searching for food, successful ants leave traces of pheromones along their trails, a signal to the other ants that there's a path to dinner. If we make a problem-solving graph, then humans can quietly leave their signals, that is, their ideas, for others to build upon. In a brainstorming graph, the goal grows downward into refined sub-goals. Resources are interacted together and grow upward. When the two directions connect, solutions start to emerge. Let's see how brainstorming would handle a classic management problem, like this real-life conundrum at the company Pacific Power and Light. Winter storms in the Cascade Mountains leave power lines loaded with ice, which if left unattended will break the lines. Having workers climb the poles to shake the lines is both dangerous and time-consuming. Management searched for a better method for years. What if they had used brainswarming? To start, they would simply place the goal at the top of the brainstorming graph and a few known resources at the bottom. Then the group would be instructed not to talk, but to simply add post-it notes and drawn lines to the graph. People who are naturally top-down thinkers would start refining the goal. Other naturally bottom-up thinkers would analyze how the resources could be used, or they would add new resources. Pretty soon, the two directions would connect, an indication that the group is finding ways to use the resources to solve the problem. This figure shows a careful refinement of the goal, as well as Pacific Power and Light's actual solution of using the helicopter's downdraft to shake the lines enough to remove the ice. Other solutions are also shown, including using a helicopter to drop a de-icing agent onto the lines, and using the conducted electricity to generate enough heat to melt the ice on the outside of the lines. We don't know for sure whether using brainstorming would have helped Pacific Power and Light come up with an effective solution more quickly. But our pilot work shows that brainstorming produces up to 115 ideas in 15 minutes versus 100 ideas per hour for traditional brainstorming. By switching from talking to writing on a structured graph, brainstorming greatly improves the effectiveness of group work.
All right. So what I want to do is tie that in to what's going on here. Do you have any questions or comments before I proceed to kind of show how that fits in here with this map?
No, pretty clear. Onward.
Okay, great. So let's say that goal of removing ice from power lines is represented by this little blue dot here, right? That means, now they showed there that there were 3 different ways that could be achieved. Let me see if I can draw them in these three boxes here. So one way was to shake the lines. Another way, that's one way that achieves this goal. Boing. Another way to achieve that goal is to prevent ice from forming in the first place. And the third way is to warm the lines, warm the power lines. And if we sat and thought about it, we'd probably come up with other ways. So, by the way, you may in general want to mute your microphone if it's convenient for you. I mean, if you're about to say something, obviously unmute it and all that, but we're definitely getting some echo there. Okay. So then those different ways in turn can be refined down into sub-ways, right? Like, well, how are we going to, how are we going to shake it? Well, we could use wind, we could use poles, right? And then ultimately, these specific subways get refined down that it's, okay, this is very clear. You're saying, do this with these tools. And then those tools then are solutions, right? That can be built up out of specific resources, boom, boom, boom. Or in some cases, sub-assemblies and even sub-assemblies, boom, 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 which in turn draw on other resources.
Hey, sorry, I wasn't seeing the picture there for a second, but I realized I had hit a button.
Oh, okay. So the picture is coming through clearly?
Yes.
Peter? Okay.
Yes,
So,
picture's good.
Okay. Did you see? So I was just saying, if this is the goal up here, which is, remove ice from power lines. I just kind of recreated the three main ways in which that could be achieved: shake the lines, prevent ice from forming, warm the lines. And then those ways in turn can be broken down into subways, sub-subways that are more and more specific, that ultimately draw upon other solutions. And these can be existing solutions, off-the-shelf solutions, solutions that we custom create, solutions that build upon other solutions, right? And all of which draw upon resources, right? So anyway, the pathway between resources to goals and needs, and ultimately the grand telos of a whole world, the pathway can be very direct or it can be very circuitous, depending on the nature of the problem, the need, the goal, the way that we're achieving that goal, the solution, the resource, etc. Okay. So let me just go ahead and show like another, perhaps simpler example. So we got whole world, we got planet and people, and this translates down to a leaf node needs layer, and I'll just start to show these needs and goals and resources and everything. I'll just increasingly do like this, and I'll just kind of chunk out parts of it. You get the idea, right? In other words, if I had all night, I would go like this, la 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 la. I'm just saying, all right. So you got needs, you got goals, you've got a layer of ways, which are really a subset of solutions. In fact, I should probably draw this slightly differently. What I should probably do is put the ways layer kind of inset a little bit, and then here say, look, all of this is solutions, right? Even the ways of doing things, all the way down to oh, let's connect this with that. That's part of a solution. The this and the that are connected are resources, right? So we're kind of presupposing a set of resources. So the example I wanted to give is that of the solution of holistic land management, right? I'll just kind of represent it with kind of an icon of like grassland, because that's where most of it has been applied to date. Holistic land management. Well, holistic land management draws upon a whole bunch of different resources: livestock, soil, people. By the way, resources, I broadly group them into human resources, technology, and nature. And I'm careful not to say natural resources because I don't like that combination of words. It implies that we humans have dominion and we can just use all these natural resources however we see fit. Let me just, sorry, I got to turn off my ringer. These various resources that holistic land management uses, what it actually, the things that it actually impacts, if you look at all the impacts in terms of the goals that it sets out to achieve, it spans so many different goals that address so many different needs, heavily concentrated around the needs of the planet, right? So, you know, we will see massive fulfillment of needs through holistic land management, planetary needs, in terms of air, right? Holistic land management sequesters massive amounts of carbon, potentially more than all that we're emitting is the potential that we have to sequester on an annual basis to really help turn the corner. Of course, this is going to take global implementation of holistic land management, but you know, what else are we going to do? Sit around and watch reruns of Seinfeld while the world, you know, goes to hell? No, we got to do something. So, and big problems often call for big solutions, and I don't think this is any exception. What could possibly be a bigger problem than the one Professor Guy McPherson articulates? So yes, we need big solutions like holistic land management. So anyway, a big fat check mark on air and the needs of the atmosphere, massive check mark on land. The holistic land management can literally be used to reverse desertification. So huge check mark on land and a huge check mark on water. So boom, boom, boom. We can solve so many problems with holistic land management, as well as people problems, because as we reverse desertification, we heal ecosystems and make them viable in terms of people's livelihood and food production. So people can stay on the land or return to the land. Many of the world's problems are caused by overpopulation combined with destruction of the biosphere, which is causing mass migration. And that in turn fuels terrorism and war and all kinds of problems. But ultimately they have their roots in environmental problems. And so likewise, you're going to see holistic land management addressing massive people needs as well. I just wanted to use that as an example. So the reason that we look at this holistically is for many reasons, but I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? We need to solve all of the world's mega problems simultaneously because they're all collectively about to do us in. I mean, that's pretty clear. I posit. Anyway, let me go back to video just so we can have kind of a conversation here. I've been doing a lot of whiteboarding, but let's take a look at each other face to face if you're game. Peter, and just see what questions or feedback or thoughts you have.
Well, I get to understand how an engineer's mind works a little bit. So it all seems to make sense. What you've laid out. I don't necessarily have any questions. I'm following it and looking for how you now piece it together with what this all leads to, or what how this, yeah.
Totally. Okay, well, great. Okay, but you're tracking is basically what I'm hearing. It's all.
Yeah, you're a very good artist, and it seems pretty clear.
Awesome.
And
well, thank you so much. And
Winnie has enjoyed it also.
Good. Well, there's more to go. So I'll tell you what. Why don't I just go for as long as it's comfortable for you? And then when you need to take a break, we take a break, we stop recording, and then maybe we'll pick it up again tomorrow.
Very good.
Does that sound good?
I got about 15 more minutes. I think 15 more minutes here would be good for me.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'll encourage you to mute your microphone liberally, just because of the recording and all that. But don't hesitate to jump in at any moment. So now back to the abstract, back to the general, right? So we've got our needs up here, we've got our goals below that, we've got our our ways of achieving these specific goals, but of course that ways are a subset of the big granddaddy, which is solutions, which draw upon resources. Okay, so with that as our grand framework, let's talk about these solutions. So a given solution, it can start out as an idea, right? Collective intelligence itself started as an idea, radical collective intelligence. So did the Hungerless games, so did community cafes, any of these solutions. Holistic land management started as an idea. So you have an idea, and collective intelligence says that the fastest way to evolve that idea is through a conversation. And the best way to bring in the best people for that conversation is to make the conversation globally accessible. And the way that we're kind of pioneering that in radical collective intelligence is through the recorded Google Hangout, or just more generally recorded video conference. It could be on whatever platform. But the recorded conversation, number one, anyone anywhere in the world can jump in and participate. So you can have Mary over here, and Bob over here, and Peter over here, and all these folks jumping in, participating in this conversation to develop this idea. And then other people subsequently can watch the Hangout and submit their own comments, their own questions, their own insights, their own additions, so they can pile on and add stuff to the conversation. I'll just kind of fill it in with subsequent stuff. But then let's say that this virtual team that's forming over here commits to meeting once a week to really push it forward. And of course, in the meantime, other folks will be adding their ideas and input. Word will be spreading that, hey, they've got this idea about how they're going to do, geoshading to cool the planet, for example. That's one of the big ideas. Geoshading and holistic land management are two topics that we need to be developing like crazy in order to have a chance of survival. Those are two among many others that we need to be developing. But anyway, conversation after conversation, the cool thing here is any given conversation, let's say weeks into the future, this conversation builds upon and leverages this entire stack of knowledge. And I draw it in gold because it's worth way more than gold. Listen, we're talking about saving our lives. So the solutions that make that possible are going to be worth more than all the gold in the world. But still, we got to represent them with something. And here's the thing, because these conversations are recorded, they constitute a form of perfect memory. The YouTube videos that you can play back at any time, and you can actually transcribe. So we can transcribe into text the content of these video conferences. And with voice recognition and tone recognition and all this, we'll actually have a complete transcript. Who said what, at what time. And at any moment, if you want to actually, you're reading the transcript and you're like, wow, this is fascinating. You just hit play, boom. And now you're watching the people have the conversation, complete with pictures like we're drawing here on the whiteboard. So, I'm just going to pause for just a brief moment and make a metaphysical comment, which is that what we're doing is we're using technology to bring people together in a hyper efficient way and to amplify our human intelligence. One of the ways of amplifying it is by recording it, just like we're doing right now, and making it accessible to all, building the collective memory, this perfect memory of these conversations. And the transcriptions make the conversations searchable, discoverable, indexable. So, a person with very specific expertise, say in solar, can do very specific searches and find conversations where they're talking about subtopics of solar, where he has very relevant expertise, and then he can dive in and make this crucial thing called a micro contribution. And a micro contribution is exactly like it sounds. It's a very specific contribution made at a very specific point in time, that constitutes a very specific crucial piece of this tower of knowledge that is being built, and that it just keeps growing over time, right? This conversation, this series of conversations that are recorded, constitute a tower of knowledge. And in fact, a tower of intelligence, because what is intelligence after all? But the accumulation and immediate access to vast storehouses of knowledge, whether it's in the realm of pattern recognition. That is that kind of a duck. And yes, indeed, that duck is edible. So kaplunk, shoot the duck, eat the duck. And that accomplishes several things, of course, good and bad. But my point is, that's intelligence, is the pattern recognition, the muscle memory, again, a form of intelligence. It's knowledge, it's stored knowledge. Anyway, this is one kind of radical view, that intelligence is immediate access to vast storehouses of knowledge spanning all of the realms to which you might need to apply that knowledge. It's also processing power, of course, is a big part of intelligence. And, which is why it's so powerful to combine the processors of all these different people, both synchronously for those who are actually having the conversation, and asynchronously for those who enjoy and add to the conversation later, right? So these solutions really exist in conversations, in stored, recorded conversations. This is a radical form of knowledge creation, knowledge expansion, enrichment of knowledge, because of the perfect memory aspect. If we were to just make a list of, what are sort of the key ingredients or drivers of collective intelligence, and so one of them is perfect memory, and we're talking about massive amounts of memory. All the YouTube videos. I just saw a thing on the news just yesterday that YouTube had surpassed like 1 billion hours of viewing every day. 1 billion hours of YouTube videos are watched every day. So people are making use of this memory, but not to save the planet. They're using it for ego, for enrichment, which is code for destroying the planet. So basically and also they're not using collective intelligence in anywhere the structure that we are. We're really pioneering. So we have the teleological taxonomy, which is a really powerful structure and way to organize crucial information within the collective intelligence for the purpose of creating a whole world. You have, processing power, bringing in but it's specialized processing power, right? Highly specialized, like we were talking about in the case of the expert in a very specific niche of solar, who then can apply his power, his processing power, his or hers, to through that specialized niche to multiple different areas of application, multiple different solutions. You see, there are going to be ultimately millions of solutions probably that are being created and developed and combined and recombined and perfected and transformed. This processing power really is what makes that possible. The power to make micro contributions exactly where they are needed, and in fact, we'll have all kinds of capabilities for connecting people, connecting specialists, right? Connecting specialists with, I'll just call it, solutions in progress. Hey, we're working on this great solution, but we're stuck. We need somebody who knows about, titanium rivets for satellite applications so that we can do this geoshading, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's find that expert, right? Which is, of course, increasingly easy to do. Specialists with solutions in progress, like work in progress, right? So connecting, the power to connect, the knowledge of who to connect with what projects, and essentially invite them and say, hey, it's very important that you help us here. And people are going to be much more willing to connect and jump in and contribute when they're asked to, when they know that their own neck and their children's necks and their grandchildren's necks are all on the chopping block, thanks to the threat, and according to Professor Guy McPherson, the reality of near-term human extinction. So you're going to see, sometimes I like to draw pictures of this and kind of play around with images, but think about it is that the sum total of everything we need to do is like this giant multi-dimensional puzzle where there's all these weird shapes. Think like amino acids folding into complex proteins. But anyway, the sum total of all these solutions is this massively complex puzzle, right? Of all these different parts, pieces, sub-solutions, mega solutions like holistic land management and geoshading, much more minor local solutions like a very specific recycling program in a specific neighborhood in Anchorage, Alaska, whatever. And all of these, to build out each and every one of these individual solutions, will often require micro contributions from a whole bunch of different specialists around the world who can come together virtually, build out the solution through a persistent conversation, persistent and ongoing conversation, which is this golden tower of knowledge, where each layer here is a separate meeting, a separate recorded meeting. And this perfect history enables somebody 2 years into the future to discover this conversation for the first time. They can take the down elevator down to the ground floor and route down to the very beginning. They can read summary syntheses of everything that happened in the first 5 meetings, the next 5 meetings, the next 5 meetings, the next 5 meetings. So in 15 minutes, they can get a great synthesis of everything that's happened, the whole trajectory, the whole history. We now have perfect history because the conversations are recorded, right? So anyway, in this picture, this whole solution is represented by this one piece here, right? And it could be that for a grand solution like geoshading, right, you need to branch off. Okay, red leader to gold leader, you guys work on this part of it. Red leader, you work on this other part over here. Boom, 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 right? And then together and then of course there's still the main thread, the main trunk, like the main trunk of a tree. And it can farm out whatever, subtopics or subsystems in the case of geoshading. There's gonna be thousands of systems that need to work together, and we need to build them really, really fast, according to Professor Guy McPherson. Well, Professor Guy McPherson gives us a pretty narrow time frame to save our butts. Of course, he's not really a strong advocate of saving our butts. So pessimistic is he about where we're headed. But I don't think he fully appreciates collective intelligence yet. We'll be talking with him tomorrow. But anyway, hopefully this begins to give you a flavor of the power that we are about to tap into using technology. I mean, this is what the internet was created for crying out loud. I mean, they didn't know it at the time, the fathers of the internet, but this is what it was, or maybe they did. Bottom line, this is what the internet is needed for, to build out this collective intelligence, to connect people, so that we can all participate in making the micro contributions that we need to make individually and collectively, right? Think of all the times that you and I get together, or you and I and Michael get together, and the three of us make a micro contribution, right? That we couldn't, that no one of us could have made on our own, right? So this completely opens up the space of collaboration, of global collaboration among people from all walks of life to create all of the solutions that we need to create to save ourselves, our species, and all other species that can possibly be saved.
Amen, he says. Amen. Well, thank you. That does help to get a visual. So many people are visual. I know I am. A visual framework of how you see the collective intelligence working in a very tangible way. Yeah. So there you go. You just added to the collective intelligence with a 45-minute rant on the powers of it all.
Exactly. Yeah, and hopefully it was educational, and these kinds of recorded rants, the software developers are going to be able to watch these and say, wow, man, well, that's not going to be that hard to build, and it's not going to be that hard to build. And using collective intelligence, we get to build the platform using collective intelligence itself, right?
Yeah.
So as the Chinese saying goes, it takes an X to make another X, right? And through constant improvement, we make better and better axes. Likewise, we make better and better collective intelligence platforms with all the different systems that we're talking about. So, I'm envisioning in the future with, haptics and mixed reality, virtual reality, people will be able to explore multidimensional teleological taxonomies and navigate through all the different ways to achieve those goals and solutions to achieve those goals. And optimal, and a big part of it. You may want to mute because we're getting a lot of echo here. But a huge part of it is global holistic modeling, having a complete holistic model of the entire world in which you can overlay all these different solutions and combinations of solutions, right? Now, this is all phenomenally complex, way more than a single mind can comprehend, to take in the fullness of it all. But we have computers to help us do that. And we have beautiful graphical user interfaces and ways to synthesize, vast amounts of information down to its essence and communicate to those different specialists, whether they're in the private sector, academia, the government, or just full-time, radish, warriors for saving our planet. Regardless, we will all, I forget what I was about to say there, but we will all be able to navigate through the teleological taxonomy, zero in on those projects that need us the most, right? Each of us is being called upon to contribute based on our knowledge, experience, education, contacts, networks, everything. All of us are being called upon to contribute to the saving of our precious and singular only home, our only world, our common world. So let's get it on. Please join radish.org. It's free and always will be. And we're going to be using a significant chunk of the collective intelligence precisely to build out the platform that makes operational everything that we've just seen on the whiteboard tonight. right? Let's make that operational. Once it's operational, oh my goodness, we just take off from there. And start building and evaluating all the solutions that we need to build to save ourselves, including the global holistic model, which is yet another grand open source effort within collective intelligence. So there's gonna be all these sub-projects that we're gonna be building out, including the software and hardware for making these conversations more and more accessible and more transcribable and more indexable and searchable. I mean, just whatever is needed, we're going to develop so that we really give this Armageddon destiny a run for its money. Let's make that thing obsolete, right?
There you go. Giving the apocalypse a run for its money. All right. Thank you, Jamen. I have a better foundation for our future conversations. Again in the morning and make a plan for tomorrow.
Wonderful, Peter. Thank you so much for listening, and you and Winnie, and let's look forward to tomorrow. Thank you so much.
All right, buddy. Have a good night.
All right. You too.